If you've been walking around thinking testosterone is a male hormone, let me lovingly stop you right there. Women actually have way more testosterone than we do estrogen. So today we're diving into a hormone that I feel like women don't get enough credit for. Testosterone is a big part of your identity, your drive, your spark, that inner fire that we have. In women, testosterone plays a role in your muscle building, in your fat burning, in your motivation, in your mood stabilization, in your energy and vitality, in your bone strengthening, in your cognitive sharpness. I didn't know this stuff before I knew this stuff, so now I want you to know this stuff. This is really important to understand. Testosterone actually begins to decline years before estrogen does from our ovaries. By the time you feel like perimenopause starting to come on, testosterone typically is already sliding down that hill. And then in menopause, you're actually only going to be producing about 20 to 25% of what you used to, which is why suddenly you can't build muscle the way you used to. Weight kind of suddenly creeps into the belly, your libido fades, that motivation disappears. Let's talk about symptoms of low testosterone specific to women, because women feel low testosterone differently than men. Hey there, sister. Welcome back to the Period Whisperer podcast, the show where we talk about the things women in midlife should have been taught years ago, but instead we're learning together now, often with coffee, sometimes with wine, and always with good old, I care a lot less about what other people think now that I'm in midlife, honesty. First of all, though, how are you feeling in your body today? Are you feeling a little blah? Maybe you're missing your spark a bit. Let me be clear that this, of course, can come from a lot of things in life and in health, but it definitely is impacted by the hormone that we are going to talk about today. So today we're diving into a hormone that I feel like women don't get enough credit for, a hormone that really quietly shapes our metabolism, our libido, our muscle, and honestly, our confidence. I'm talking about testosterone, our secret sauce hormone, I like to think of it as. So if you've been walking around thinking testosterone is a male hormone, let me lovingly stop you right there, because this episode is going to connect so many dots in your life. You're going to feel like you just found the missing page from your owner's manual. So grab your mushroom coffee. This is something I am testing out these days, and I will let you know what I think about soon. Or grab your greens or your B minerals or whatever you're sipping, and let's dive in. And let's start first things first. Women actually have way more testosterone than we do estrogen. So yes, it is only about 1/10 of the amount that men have, but it's still a significant amount, and it plays a really, really important role. It's not just about sex drive, which I think is a lot of what we think about. Yes, it impacts libido and libido matters, but in women, testosterone plays a role in your muscle building, in your fat burning, in your motivation, in your mood stabilization, in your energy and vitality, in your bone strengthening, in your cognitive sharpness. So basically, think of testosterone like your inner hype woman. When she's strong, you feel strong. When she drops, you kind of feel like someone unplugged your life force. Knowing that about testosterone, let's talk a little bit about its decline in perimenopause and menopause, and really this midlife roller coaster that we're all fairly familiar with these days. Most women don't know this, but testosterone actually begins to decline years before estrogen does from our ovaries. By the time you feel like perimenopause starting to come on, testosterone typically is already sliding down that hill. And then in menopause, you're actually only going to be producing about 20 to 25% of what you used to, which is why suddenly you can't build muscle the way you used to. Weight kind of suddenly creeps into the belly, your libido fades, that motivation disappears. You feel a little blah overall. Your workouts can feel harder. This isn't aging. This is your hormones, right? This is physiology. But I think it's really important to understand where testosterone actually comes from. There's ovaries and adrenals and elsewhere. So 25% of your testosterone comes directly from your ovaries. Okay, what do we know about our ovaries in menopause? We know they are retiring. They've done their duty. They're out. So there goes our 25% at that point. 25% comes from your adrenal glands, right? These are our little walnut-sized organs that sit atop of your kidneys and respond to our stress. So if you are burnt out, if you are overstressed, if you are underslept, If you have been running on caffeine and not eating enough, yes, I am talking to you, or you're eating things that just stress out your body, your testosterone output from your adrenals significantly drops. So 25% comes from our adrenals, and our adrenals, they're not retiring. So keep that in mind. Now, that if you nourish your adrenals, if you are on top of caring for your adrenals, and I don't just mean outside of our life, right? Managing our stress in how we eat. I also mean like what's happening inside of our body. If your gut is off, that's very stressful on your body. If your liver is congested, very stressful on your body. So there's internal stress and then there's external stress, and your adrenals can't tell the difference between the two. So both are stressful. And if they are taxed, then there's a missing opportunity for 25% of our testosterone. The remaining 50% comes from like peripheral conversion. So, meaning that your body takes other hormones like DHEA and converts them into testosterone. It also comes from our muscle tissue. And this process requires really good nutrients, right? Good metabolic function, a healthy liver, a healthy gut. So, again, if you are stressed, if you are inflamed, if your gut is a mess, if your liver is overworked, your testosterone, your testosterone will be low long before menopause. And the good news about that is that we can do something about that. That's not just your ovaries retiring and there it's just time for them to move on, right? This is something we have full control over in our lives, how we eat, how we move, how we optimize the function of our body. Something else that I think is really important that we need to talk about that I don't hear a lot of people talking about when it comes to testosterone is a hormone that I feel like you didn't know you needed to care about. And it's called sex hormone binding globulin. You may see it. You probably haven't had it run on a blood lab. I will order it on my clients' blood labs because it's really, really important. But you can ask for it. And I would recommend asking for sex hormone binding globulin. It will show up as SHBG on your blood chemistry report. It's a sexy name, I know. But sex hormone binding globulin is like an Uber driver that picks up your hormones and just keeps them in the car, driving in circles, refusing to drop them off at their destination, kind of like hijacking you in your life. So, if sex hormone binding globulin is elevated, it's going to grab onto your hormones, including testosterone, and doesn't let your cells use them. Why does this matter? Because you can have normal or even high ish testosterone, but if sex hormone binding globulin is high, your free testosterone, the usable form, is low. And how do we feel? Tired, unmotivated, flat, frustrated, low libido, low muscle, low spark. Kind of important, right? And no one has talked to us about this. I didn't know this stuff before I knew this stuff. So now I want you to know this stuff. This is really important to understand. When you ask for your blood work, no matter where you live in the world, and you're asking to have your hormones tested, ask for your sex hormone binding globulin. I still think you should do all functional labs. We can talk about that later. But for you, going to your doctor, ask for your sex hormone binding globulin. Because again, if your testosterone looks normal, and your sex hormone binding globulin is high, we're going to be having some issues. So here's what's important though. What raises sex hormone binding globulin? Eek. The biggest culprit, birth control, kind of a huge one. And yes, I mean birth control that many women from our generation were all put on as teenagers. In fact, our teenagers today are still being put on it all the time. That raises that sex hormone binding globulin so much. And it continues even after the birth control pill. Things like thyroid medication can drive it up. Elevated estrogen. This is why it's so important to get those detox pathways cleared before you can really drive that up. Dieting and calorie restrictions. So, again, all these things and habits we were taught for decades how to lose weight by like cutting back or barely eating or burning the candles at both ends. All of these were doing us a disservice in the background. Guess what else? No one's going to love me for this one. Alcohol drives it up. Any type of stress, inflammation in the body. So, sex hormone binding globulin is a big reason why so many women are told that your labs are normal, yet you feel like garbage, because total testosterone doesn't really matter or tell as best of a picture as much as free testosterone and sex hormone binding globulin, which brings us to what is the difference between total and free? This matters so much. Okay. Let's break this down simply because this is where most women are misdiagnosed or dismissed. Total testosterone, which sometimes and can be run on your labs, this includes all testosterone floating around in your bloodstream, the usable stuff and the unusable stuff. So, total testosterone alone tells us almost nothing. What tells us something is free testosterone and your sex hormone binding globulin. So, free testosterone is really the gold, the queen, the form your body can actually use, the form that drives libido, that drives muscle tone, energy, mood, metabolism, motivation. Free testosterone. That's what we want to ask for on our blood chemistry. And as a practitioner, I will always order that in blood chemistry if I can order blood chemistry, or for my clients who don't live in the United States, I'm always asking them if they can ask their doctor to get this because it really tells us so much about the bigger picture of our hormones, the impact downstream from other things, or if this is the main problem that's keeping them from feeling really great. This, again, is why so many women are being dismissed because we don't understand these things. No one has taught us these things. Total testosterone doesn't tell us so much. Free testosterone tells us how much we have available. And then sex hormone binding globulin might be binding that up, right? It tells us how much is being bound up. So we could have even lower than what it looks like if we don't see, know, and understand these markers specifically. So, because high SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin, mops up the testosterone, leaving almost none available for your cells, you can have total testosterone in range, but your free testosterone will be really low. This is why we always want to look deeper and where functional lab work is so beneficial if you've been doing the things and the things aren't working. Or if you're just someone who knows you always want to operate at a 10, you always want to be looking ahead of where your body is going. Both of those reasons are great reasons to be on top of and investing in functional lab work. Now that we understand this, what it is, why it's important, how to kind of differentiate and look for the right things in our body to know, do I have low testosterone? Do I not? I always think it's really important to correlate that with how I am feeling, right? How you are feeling, sister. So let's talk about symptoms of low testosterone specific to women because women feel low testosterone differently than men. Here's how it actually shows up. Certainly low libido or feeling meh about sex. And I want to talk about that for a second too, because there's a lot of reasons we can feel meh about sex, right? It might not just be us, might not be our problem. So we don't always have to take that on. Might not have the energy because you're doing so many other things. You just don't have the space to care about sex right now. Maybe you haven't had a fun or different or unique moment with your partner in a really long time. Maybe you haven't had fun in a really long time. So you're kind of forgot that you have a libido. This can play an absolute role and it does play a role. But I also want women to not always blame themselves or have any shame over it's like, oh, it's me. I don't have libido. It's my hormones because that's why we're not having sex. No, there's no shame here on the Period Whisperer podcast. There's a lot of reasons that libido exits stage left. If your libido shows up, I don't know, when you're watching Magic Mike or when you're out at a bar or, when you get all dressed up or you get out with your girlfriends, if your libido shows up at other times, or listen, okay, quick side note here. I just finished watching Heated Rivalry. Shout out to the amazing gay Canadian hockey show. Listen, if you are wondering where your libido is and you watch that and your libido doesn't kick up, maybe it's testosterone, but I don't care who you are. You watch that, I'm sure you're going to feel a little something, something. So if you're wondering if it's your libido is your hormones or just maybe your interest level, go watch Heated Rivalry. Okay, back to what we were talking about. Sorry, I digress. Okay, so other symptoms of low testosterone in women specifically: decreased confidence, harder to build muscle, weight gain around the belly. I mean, don't a lot of these things sound the same as the things we talked about in the last two episodes of low and high progesterone, low and high estrogen? That's because our hormones work together, right? They're all little messengers that connect. But brain fog, reduced stamina, low motivation, more soreness after your workouts, depression or emotional flatness. I think women will often say, I just don't feel like myself anymore. And they're right. Testosterone is a big part of your identity, your drive, your spark, that inner fire that we have, right? Now, I think it's also important to talk about symptoms of high testosterone because I do see this frequently in my clients. It's not always common unless there's insulin resistance, or poorly dosed testosterone therapy. But let me tell you, do you know how many women I work with that have insulin resistance? A heck of a lot. It is very, very common. Things like acne, things like hair loss or thinning hair, things like chin or jawline hair, right? It's funny. When you have too much testosterone as a woman, you have not enough hair on your head and too much hair on your body. How interesting is that? Irritability, oily skin, irregular periods, of course. And again, this is why I think it is always really important to look more deeply at your functional labs before we start taking hormone replacement therapy. And when we are taking hormone replacement therapy, that you are working with a practitioner. What causes testosterone to drop outside of perimenopause? We already know it is dropping. We know those ovaries are retiring. So there goes at least 25% of it. I think we don't realize that so much of our lives, and probably if you've been listening to me on the show for a long time, you probably do realize these things. But here are the things that cause testosterone to drop that have nothing to do with perimenopause. Chronic stress, surprise, surprise. High cortisol. I mean, that's the same thing, right? But spiked cortisol consistently. Birth control pill, thyroid dysfunction, insulin resistance, low DHEA, which is an adrenal hormone. And again, DHEA is responsible for making a lot of our testosterone. Poor sleep, overtraining. Yes, I'm talking to you out there, sister, who is working out way too much. That will cause your testosterone to drop, believe it or not. Chronic dieting, same thing. So if you are someone who is pushing yourself really, really hard and not eating enough every single day and your hair is starting to fall out and you're not sleeping at night, yes, your testosterone is going to be in the toilet. You're likely going to have really high sex hormone binding globulin, and we've got to fix this issue. It's not always about you doing something wrong, though. Again, I already said there's no shame here. So I apologize if I just sent you into shame, but I do want you to be honest with yourself as a woman about how you're treating your body. Your body is reacting to stressors and survival signals based on our environment and the decisions that we make that put our body into a certain place. So there's a lot of things that cause testosterone to drop that have nothing to do with perimenopause. And because we know that 25%, only 25% comes from our ovaries, which is are retiring, that's still 75% of our testosterone that we could have access to. Of course, we're going to lose some of that because we're aging, and that's just a normal part. But if we are treating our body right, if we heal the function of our body, if we're listening to the messages that she says to us regularly, we can actually do quite well with our own hormone levels. And if we need hormone support, guess what? There is some hormone support. So let's talk about the types of testosterone hormone replacement therapy for women. Now, first, I think it is important to know that at this time in the USA and definitely Canada, there is no FDA approved amount of testosterone hormone replacement therapy for women, which is total BS. They are working on it. There's some amazing women out there advocating and working on this and people working on this. Doesn't mean you can't access it though. There are plenty of medications out there that are approved. Medications, just need to be dosed by a prescribing practitioner. I am not a prescribing practitioner, but when you work with a prescribing practitioner, they can help you appropriately use that. But let's talk about the different types that you're going to see out there. Testosterone cream is one of the most common, most flexible, easy to adjust, usually well tolerated and often compounded from a compounding pharmacy. This one can also be great for local areas, right? So for, some vaginal use, just to help with that libido piece. Testosterone gel, very, very similar, pre-measured doses, quite convenient, good absorption, things like that. There are testosterone trouches or lozenges, which actually dissolve in the mouth. Some women can actually get overstimulated by this, and it can kind of cause like peaks and spurts. Then there are, I think, a fairly well-known thing called testosterone pellets, which I would say these are my least favorite. They're implanted under the skin or in the rectum. They last 3 to 4 months. And this is what I don't love, because you don't know if you haven't had it, but you don't know how that's going to feel in your body, especially if you haven't done a Dutch test. If we've done a Dutch test, that's going to tell us a lot about how we metabolize our testosterone. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But if you don't know how you respond to that level of testosterone, because we haven't been tracking our testosterone all of our lives, and then you have a pellet put in and it's not coming out for 3 to 4 months, that could be a wild ride. You could end up with a lot of acne or like hair and skin issues that just don't make you feel very good and actually make you feel worse And not only that, but if your body's not metabolizing properly, it can cause a lot of trouble. So I always say, really use with caution. I know that many functional practitioners are moving away from pellets because it's very easy for women to overdose on them. And finally, there's injections, which again, this is very rare in women. And again, it's a higher risk of too high levels. So I think you need to be finding a very, very specific hormone replacement therapy menopause doctor that's going to be able to help and dose in those areas. But creams and gels tend to be the safest and easiest to personalize. So that's where I always like to start as a functional practitioner, especially as a non-prescribing practitioner. What do you need to know? How do we keep things safe? Okay, here's the truth. Testosterone is safe for women when it is dosed physiologically, right? For your physiology, for your size and shape as a being on this earth, when it is monitored properly, when it is balanced with progesterone and estrogen, right? They all work together like a fun little party. When it is supported with nutrition, minerals, and strength training, right? Risks are going to occur when doses are too high, when pellets are overused, when it's not monitored, when you have unmanaged insulin resistance in your body. But when it's done right, if that is really all you need, if you've done the underlying work, the gut's working, the liver's working, the adrenals are in good form, the thyroid's taken care of, the estrogen, like everything in your body has been optimized. And all that's left is that you need some sex hormones. Gosh, this can be amazing, right? Most women can experience life changing benefits. So I've talked about how to talk to your doctor, and what to do if you're dismissed on the last couple, but I'm going to repeat this section because I think it's so important. More and more, I am still hearing from women that I get on calls with or from my clients being very dismissed by their doctor, and especially around testosterone, no matter where you live in the world. So if you are brushed off by your doctor, something you can say is, I understand my total testosterone is within range, but my symptoms suggest low free testosterone. I'd like sex hormone binding globulin and free testosterone measured as well. Again, when you come with knowledge, do not let someone put you down. You now have this knowledge. You don't have to read it 16 times from 16 different books for it to be any more true or for you to be any more of an expert than you are right now. In order to understand your actual levels of testosterone and how it's impacting how you feel, we need free testosterone, we need sex hormone binding globulin. So don't let anyone tell you differently. You can go in and ask for those things. Something else I think you can say is, I know women make testosterone and that it's essential for libido, muscle, mood, and metabolic health. I'd like to explore whether low levels are contributing to my symptoms. And if someone says to you, these are normal, I think it's safe to say normal for age is not the same as optimal. I'd like to optimize, not survive. And if they refuse, that's when you want to seek a menopause literate practitioner. Full stop. You can, again, start with someone like me. You can find an amazing menopause doctor. There are so many incredible clinics out there now. Look into telehealth. Get the support that you need. Don't let someone put you down and make you feel like you don't know your body. You know your body, sister. Listen to her whispers. Listen to her screams. Here's my reminder for you why hormone replacement therapy should never be step one. Okay. This is my signature truth bomb for you, right? Hormones only work when your liver can detox them, when your gut can eliminate them, when your sex hormone binding globulin is balanced, when your blood sugar is stable, when your cortisol isn't hijacking your adrenals, when your protein intake supports hormone building, when your minerals are replenished. Otherwise, you're just pouring expensive hormones into a clogged system and wondering why you feel worse, right? And sister to sister, I do not like wasting time or money. I do not like it. It is one of the worst feelings. It just makes me feel worse about myself. And I don't want that feeling. And I don't want that feeling for you. So let's do the underlying work first. And if you've already done that, that's amazing. I hope this episode has given you some really great tools and education and even language to move forward to better understand your body. But before we close, I do need to talk about why the Dutch test, your dried urine test that I talk about all the time for comprehensive hormones, and your GI map, which is your stool test that helps us look a lot at your microbiome and your large intestine, are essential tools for maximizing and optimizing your body, right? So that if we need these hormone tools, our body can receive them. And often we don't, but if we do, hey, I don't know about you, but I don't want to be stuck at an 8. I want to feel like a 10. In fact, I want to feel like an 11, and I'm not going to apologize for it. And you shouldn't either. So a Dutch helps you understand free versus total testosterone. It helps you understand 5A versus 5B metabolism. This is important. This is like the acne metabolism of testosterone versus the fatigue pathway, right? We need to understand how we're metabolizing, because if it's imbalanced, there's things we can do about it holistically, and we need to understand why it's imbalanced. But if you do take testosterone, because yours is low, but we're metabolizing it down one pathway or the other, you're going to feel like junk. And we don't want that. We need to understand this about you. The Dutch also helps us understand that DHEA contribution we talked about, which is the creator, one of the parent hormones to testosterone. It helps us understand cortisol patterns that steal testosterone. It helps us understand estrogen detox, which is important for balancing all of the sex hormones. A GI map helps you understand your entire estrobolome, your gut inflammation, which equals sex hormone binding globulin elevation, infection or dysbiosis that suppress hormone production, whether you're absorbing nutrients that needed to make hormones, insulin resistant patterns. Together, you're getting a roadmap to safe, effective, personalized testosterone optimization. But in essence, when you do a Dutch and a GI map, you're finding the why. That's my job. I always say this to my clients, like, my job is to answer the question why. You're already telling me what. I feel like junk. I want to know why. We want to know why. Because with the why, we get a chance to find the how, right? How do we come back? And it's not always a straight shot, but we eventually get there. Now, listen, before I close out today, I want to share with you some natural ways to support your testosterone before or with hormone replacement therapy. Here's what actually works: strength training, strength training, strength training. As long as your adrenals are good, we can strength train. Not every day. We don't strength train every day. 4 days a week, I think, max, unless you're trying to win a competition. Creatine, one of the most longest studied supplements that we know that makes an impact here. Getting at least 100 grams a day of protein, getting your healthy fats, your minerals like B minerals. Have I talked to you about B minerals yet? I'm sure you've heard me talk about them. I love them. They are such a foundational piece of my daily health. Sleep, of course. So if your sleep is off and we haven't fixed it yet, we got to prioritize that sleep. Blood sugar regulation, right? Eating those meals consistently. Stress support in any way that you can get it, sister. I don't care if you need to scream in your car. I don't care if you need to masturbate in your closet. We got to release the stress. We got to manage it somehow. DHEA sometimes can be really helpful if needed, but we got to test for it for sure. These foundations often really increase free testosterone even before adding hormone replacement therapy. Okay, sister. Whew. That's all like a lot of information. Testosterone matters, right? For your energy, your confidence, your metabolism, your libido, your brain, your body composition. For you, you're not broken. You're not just aging. You're not meant to just slowly fade away. You're built for vitality in your 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s. We've got decades left to live. And with the right tools and the right guidance and the right labs, you can absolutely reclaim your fire. But if you don't know where to start, make sure you start with your foundations. Make sure you start and listen to some of the previous episodes that I have shared so that you know the first little things. And of course, you can always swipe up, check in the resources. I've got some great starting points here for free, and great starting points that are for a small amount of money, just to get you some wins on the board so that you feel a little bit better. If you have loved this episode, please share it with a friend. Let's let more women understand about testosterone. Drop a review, reach out. And if you want functional testing or hormone support, or you want to learn how to work together on this, this is what we do best around here. And by we, I mean me, because it's just me. Your body is speaking. Now you know how to listen. You know more about testosterone. So go out, be more in your life and not just less on a scale. And we'll catch you in the next episode.